Hi, my name is CJ and this is my RC channel. In this video, I am continuing the evolution of my Slash that I've run on road courses. And this is going to be a rather large modification. As you've seen over this series, I have taken this Slash, I've lowered it, I've gone through several different sets of shocks until I finally came across a setup that really worked for it. In the last video, I made some differential changes, and my goal was to take it to the track yesterday and do some filming and show you how that differential change worked out for me. Unfortunately, it rained and racing was canceled. So, auspiciously, the parts that I'd been waiting for to do this next step had come in. And so I'm going to go ahead and move past those diff changes because next weekend is going to be the last weekend of the season. It was supposed to be yesterday, but since we got rained out, we have pushed the season, and we're going to have one more day coming. So I have another week to work on the car prior to testing. And instead of making you wait till spring to see how this goes, I'm going to go ahead and do this now and include that in with the diff changes. Now, what I'm doing here is, like I said, it's a substantial change. Right off the bat, I'm trying to reduce some weight. Particularly, I'm trying to reduce rotating mass, and I'm trying to tighten up the suspension. Off-road vehicles in general tend to have a certain amount of slop in them, and I'm trying to tighten that up. And I'm also, like I said, I'm trying to lighten unsprung weight, which is anything that is off the chassis hung from the shock absorbers. Those things, the more weight, the slower suspension reacts. The less reactive the suspension is, the worse the car is going to handle. Also, I was hoping to lighten the entire package a bit, if possible. And I may be lightening some areas, but gaining weight in others. We'll just have to see how this goes. I'm going to try to kind of weigh groups of things as I go. For example, the stock, well, they're not stock. The drive shafts that I have on the vehicle now are Traxxas drive shafts. They are not the stock plastic ones. They are the steel telescoping drive shafts. Now, those are good drive shafts, and they will take a beating for sure. I've had zero problems with them, but you know, my eye tells me that they're a little heavy based on the way they're just designed. And so I'm going to be switching up to this these two Techno kits. Basically, it changes the telescoping drive shafts for a set of dog bone drive shafts. So there's a lot less metal involved. The Techno out drives are notoriously light because they do big cutaways and grind away all the excess metal. I'm going to be using also the Techno 17 millimeter hub adapters, the hex adapters, and these should be lighter and tighter than the setup that I'm running now, which is basically an adapter that bolts onto an existing out drive, versus these are made to be a 17 millimeter out drive to begin with. So, you know, that all these things combined here should lighten and tighten the outboard weight and the unsprung weight, and tighten up the steering. To try to help lighten things up a little more, I spent a few extra bucks on some Lunsford products. I got a titanium hinge pin set for the Traxxas Slash 4x4, so this will replace the screw-in and plug-in kingpins that are on either end of the swing arms. And I got a set of titanium turnbuckles, and that'll also take a little bit of weight away. Titanium weighs about 2/3 of steel. Varies. Anyway, now the aluminum chassis may actually end up weighing more than the stock plastic chassis. I'm going to have to kind of weigh that out. There are differences that are going to impact that. This is a I can't tell you the brand of this because I honestly don't know. I got this off of eBay. They had a bunch of them for sale. I'm not sure, as I said, who makes it, but I will put a link in the description. So if this is something you're interested in, you can pick one up. It was about $160 at the time of purchase. I can get you numbers on all of these items. It's not a cheap proposition to make this big change, but hopefully it's going to pay off. So we have a flat aluminum pan that has some lightening on it. We have a front piece that bolts on that gives us our kick. We have a nice motor mount set up here, which is going to hold the rear of the Slash axle through this hole here, and have our motor on this slide piece here, so adjustment of the motor is going to be nice and easy. The standoffs are going to be for this aluminum brace here. That's going to get rid of that steel brace that I had purchased. That's going to take weight off right there. So as I said, I'm going to weigh the car as is, with no body, no battery, and no wheels and tires. And that will be the baseline to compare with. And then as I start taking things away, for example, the drive shafts, I'm going to take the entire drive shaft assembly, less the hubs. There's no point in weighing the plastic hubs, but the U-joints, out drives, etc. I'm going to take those items and weigh them and get a comparison to see, if that stuff actually is lighter. And then at the end of the day, we'll see what the entire package weighs compared versus the original number, again, without body and without wheels and tires and without a battery. I will weigh it with motor and ESC and servo and receiver and transponder, basically ready to race, no wheels, tires, no battery, no body. And then I'll do the same after the build. So that should, so that's where this build is going to go. So I'm going to start by taking the car, taking the body off it, and getting a weight number on it for us to start. Okay, so I've got the car on the scales, and let's see, we've got a total weight of 1,983 grams. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget about that. It's really impressive how filthy stuff gets, even with on-road racing, even though the gentleman who organizes all this racing has a big blower on wheels that he takes around the parking lot and blows any grass and leaf matter and, you know, anything else that can be small pebbles, whatever, can be blown off. There's still a tremendous amount of dust, dirt, and grime that gets into these cars. And even just one heat, and you can turn the car over and shake a lot of gravel and stuff out of it. Well, here's something I was wanting to kind of test anyway. Let's just go ahead and do some weights here real quick. I picked up a new servo. This is just a generic servo that I happen to have around, and I'm figuring it's a bit on the heavy side, and I wanted to I've also had a few steering glitches I couldn't explain, so I wanted to get a better servo, and so I went with good old Savox. This is a high torque servo. It was actually a scratch and dent, so it was very, very inexpensive. A-Main Hobbies must have gotten it on a return from somebody. Hopefully it works. I'm going to test it right away and make sure, but I just want to see how this weighs in, one versus the other. So, old servo is 67.5 grams. New servo is 65.4. So, ooh, I'm saving a whole gram, 1.1 grams. But, you know, it adds up. If I do that across a lot of different items, you know, also hopefully this is a more reliable servo than this. So I'm going to get my servo tester and check this out. Okay, that's really pathetic that they didn't test this. This servo is just full of jitter. So, for the time being, I'm going to put this one back in, and I'm going to ship this back. That's irritating. A-Main really dropped the ball on that. See, that's a nice smooth servo. I don't care if it was only $20 from Amazon, it's still a nice smooth reacting servo. And considering it was a gram's difference, I may just leave this in here. It's waterproof. It's 35 kilogram torque. It's a high torque servo, metal geared, 20 bucks. I'm really disappointed in this. Because at the time I purchased it, I did not know it was scratch and dent. I figured that out once I got it and opened it up, and the packaging was odd, and it's like, wait a second, what's going on here? And I looked at the little label and it says scratch and dent, and it's like, you know, I knew it was a decent price, but I didn't notice anything in the interface that said scratch and dent. So, oh well, live and learn. So as you can see, I've got everything mostly apart. Here is the old chassis, and I'm down to my diff cases, swing arms, and suspension, center diff, and well, I guess I am going to need this, but all of this is going to be set aside. And this definitely does not weigh what the aluminum kit weighs. Now, there are other pieces that are going to be left out, like the motor mount, but I think in the end, overall, this will be a little heavier, but it's certainly going to be a lot stiffer, and there are other advantages as well. Okay, time lapse was great for disassembling, but putting this together, I think you guys are going to need to hear me give you some info from time to time. For example, there really aren't any instructions. I mean, there aren't. There's a few photos on the website or on the eBay page, but that's it. So you're kind of on your own. Now, it was easy enough to figure out that putting this this nose piece on here, this tongue, when I first tried the slightly longer bolts, which look like they're probably a 12, that they were coming through by at least 3 millimeters or so, and that just wasn't going to be right. So I looked in amongst the parts and found some what looked like 8 millimeter. And these are M4s, countersunk, of course. Okay, so definitely you're going to want to use Loctite on all the metal on metal stuff here, because this thing could rattle itself loose no problem if given the opportunity. So again, there's a lot of kind of figuring stuff out to do here, what goes where. And I'm betting these are for our steering. I'm just gonna confirm that. Yep, these are the standoffs for steering. Okay, so those are gonna go right on here. And I am betting that these two countersunk screws here are gonna be our screws that pass through here and into the standoffs. So those are M3s. We definitely want to put some Loctite on these. Again, don't go overboard with Loctite. It's simply not necessary. You're just trying to, stop the screw from coming undone. You're not trying to glue it in place. Okay, that's odd. I'm kind of, I'm hitting bottom on those threads. So I'm going to try flipping this standoff over. I guess it's not threaded all the way through. Let's see if we can confirm that. Yeah, see, it stops right there. Let's try the other side. Okay, this side seems to go a little further, so I'm going to try that side and see if it tightens down or not. If not, I'll get another piece of hardware out. Oh, crap. While I was doing this, I forgot which direction I had here, so now I need to reconfirm that. Okay, that's the shorter one. See, and that still isn't, it's closer to fitting, but it's not quite. So I'm going to put on some other screws and swap these out. I have some titanium hardware and some aluminum hardware. Now, aluminum hardware is a third steel. So anything I can replace with aluminum on any kit is a bonus. And I'm going to start doing that where I can. And I'm also going to be using a lot more titanium hardware. Because, you know, weight is that you can get rid of is always good. But aluminum you have to be very careful with because, number one, it's soft, so you can strip the heads a lot easier. So you've got to be very careful about Loctite and screwing it into like deep pieces of plastic. You've also got to be careful about what you're screwing it into, as in how strong the joint needs to be. So this is all stainless steel hardware here. Well, there's a few pieces of steel thrown in here, but it's all stainless mostly. There's anything that's not stainless is black. A few pieces just got tossed in there. Okay, that's long enough. It's not a lot, but let's see if I've got something in between those two. Well, I'm probably not going to be able to. It's basically about 3 millimeter difference, 4 millimeter tops. So it's more likely that anything else that I have is going to be the same size as the black ones. Let's see. Yeah. So because of the limited threading, I'm going to use these two here. So let's again find the short one, which is not this end. It's that end. So I'm going to point it that way. And let's get number 2 going. Okay, that's the long end. I'm just going to check the other side to see if this is an anomaly, and they're both the same. Bet not. Yeah. So they're both of them, one side is threaded deeper than the other. So keep that in mind. You may need some hardware, like I'm doing. Unfortunately, you can't compensate with washers, because if you put a washer down below here, the deck is going to be raised by that height because you're going to be locking down the deck. So another thing is holding these is probably best done with a wrench of one type or another, but not anything with teeth. So sorry about the bouncing camera. A little bit of Loctite. And that's going to be plenty of thread. That's not going to be an issue. Okay. Number 2. Okay, that's 2. So, I happen to have new bearings for these. I didn't put them on previously, but I'm going to do them now, since the 2 lower bearings are stuck on those plastic standoffs. I which is one of the reasons I didn't do the swap out to begin with. And you know, as long as I've got this disassembled, I'm gonna take a minute to kind of clean things. Put a little bit of lubrication on that bushing, stuff like that. Might as well do this right. Yeah, see, if I hadn't taken this apart, I'd have these grimy bearings here. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to take these apart. That might be a little more difficult, but I'm going to try. If you're not familiar with this part of the Traxxas steering, there we go. Steering linkage, it's kind of a, you see how these things, they squeeze together and snap in, and I just used my fingernails and kind of pushed on them and popped it right out. So, I'm going to pause up for a second and get some cleaning fluid. So, I cleaned most of it. Obviously, I forgot one item here. So what I'm going to do is, since this is metal on plastic, I don't want to put a liquid grease on it. And I have this, it's called Dry White with Cling. And I've used this before on kits that have a lot of plastic on plastic, like the Bagura Fat Fox, the Euro truck by Tamiya. This works great because, first off, liquid grease where it's an exposed part, you stand a really good chance of just picking up a lot of dust, bringing that dust into the components, and then creating even more wear. You're almost making a grainy slurry. So this stuff, though, is a really fine powder, and it tends to cling to stuff. And once you've got it inside stuff, it stays, and it works very nicely for lubricating these parts. And it does tend to get everywhere if you're not careful with it, because, like I said, it is a powder, and it's an extremely fine powder. So one good way is to kind of just lay some of it down on your work area or on a towel, and then rub stuff in it, and then clean off the area afterwards, because it does leave a bit of a mess. And so I want this to be smooth, so back off like a quarter turn at a time until you get a non-sticking action. Good. Okay. Is that spring down or spring up? Let me check or shouldn't say instructions. I've got the photos open. Yep. Okay, and that's the reason that they give us, you see this hole right here? That's so that we can access this screw. And that's really nice that they did that. I think that's a nice little bit of engineering there. So there we go, and then there's a pair of aluminum bushings, which are going to go on top here. Now, those are going to press on the bearing outer and inner reeses because they're wide. So I am going to recommend putting on a shim or a small washer. And I'm pretty sure I've got some small shims that should do perfect for this. Let's see. This is why it's good to have a good selection of hardware. And before I dive into that, I'm gonna clean up this powdered lubricant. That stuff gets everywhere. And that's probably the last time I'm gonna need that for this process. So, set those aside. Cap the thread locker. And calipers. So 5mm. Now, remember, we want something that's going to go around this post, but it's not wide enough that it's going to press on this outer reese of the bearing. And these are 6mm, or are they? Yeah, they look like they're 6. So if I were to slide that down there, that's going to go over the reese. Yeah, that's not going to help. Okay, so I really need a 5mm inner diameter shim. And I'm not sure I'm going to have one in here. I think these are all going to be 6mm. Yeah, they're all the same. These are 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3 thickness. These are specific for a diff. Now these little suckers might work. Let's see what we've got here. These are little axle shims for the Formula One front wheels. That's 5mm. That goes right over the reese. Wish I had a couple of these. So what I'm going to want to do is pick the flattest surface. Like this one has a bit of a chamfered edge, and that chamfering is going to defeat that that little shim there. So this is the one we're going to do. That's going to rest right on top, and that's going to prevent that thing from moving around. So got one on each. Get the flat side. There we go. Okay. Now I may actually need to take this off because I think that before I put this on, okay, as I was saying, I think what I really need to do at this point is I need to remove this, because I need to kind of build up this chassis a bit before I put on the cap. I can't really lock these in place until I'm at that point. I mean, I could throw a couple of big washers on here, put on a couple of screws and move, but I'll just have this stuff flapping around here, and I might as well just pull it. Well, let's see. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do, because it was a little work pushing those bearings down in place, and I don't want to pry them back out. I don't want to do any damage to them. So this will hold things until I'm ready. So good. Okay. Let's see. Next steps. Okay, one of these goes here, and it has, there's a couple standoffs that come up off it like this, and that anchors our two holes for the top deck like that. And then our motor mount, of course, needs to be anchored, and that's going to go right here, and that looks like it's got the that reese in there for this bearing. So just to test. Yep, there we go. There is our center diff. And one thing I am picking up that's on the way, I don't have it yet, is a diff eliminator. It's not a slipper clutch. It basically is just a little plate that goes on the, you disassemble the slipper and you use the slipper axle to put on this little star-shaped piece that is going to allow you to mount the gear on, so you're using the same gears, but it eliminates any slippage from the drive shaft. So you are going to a 2-diff vehicle. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, you know, that's a good question, and I can't give you a good mechanical answer off the top of my head, but I'll tell you one thing. My 8th scale Serpent GT car does not have a center diff. I don't even think they give you an aftermarket option, I mean, or a factory option to put in a center diff. I was very surprised when I started putting the kit together, and I was like, wait a second, there's just a locker here for a gear, and then 2 out drives to go to the diffs. Where's my center diff? And there is none. That would have the advantage of lightening up the overall drivetrain. It's less rotating mass. It's less mass altogether. This is a pretty heavy little item. So that would be gotten rid of. And all that weight would be ditched and just have the plastic gear and a little aluminum plate. And then you don't have to worry about trying to tune for a center diff. You just tune the forward and rear diffs, and you know, like I said, it seems to work well on the 8th scale cars, so why wouldn't it work well here? So anyway, it's such a small, inexpensive part. I think it was like all of $12. It's made by the one I got. There's probably more. The one I got is made by Hot Racing. I've had pretty good luck with their aftermarket upgrade items. And so since it uses the existing slipper clutch, you know, drive shaft, it's less parts, so it's not expensive. Like I said, it's about $12. I figured I would give it a try and see how the car handles, what it changes. Problems I've been having with my car last weekend was overheating. I was running my battery, or you know, the car would croak on me. I'd be driving along and all of a sudden it would just stop. I'd go for throttle and nothing would happen and the car would just stop. And it would sit there for a few seconds, and you know, either the battery was being so drained so rapidly, that was an issue, or I think far more than likely that the ESC or motor was hitting the thermal barrier and shutting off. And that happened to me at the end of every heat. The last few laps, I had to drive with a lot more throttle restraint. And so as far as dealing with that, this might help, taking spin and making the driveline more efficient, shall we say, would probably help, number one, so that less of the motor is just going to spinning differentials and spinning, like one tire a lot. I'm getting a tremendous amount of wheel spin. And that's usually at one end or the other, which means that I'm over revving, I guess you could say, would be the gas engine equivalent. If any of you guys have thoughts on this, please, hit the comments up. I'm gonna, experiment with the car over the winter, because I'm only gonna have this last race to test and gather data. So I'll go out and do some, go out to some parking lots and have a little fun and run the car around. But it's not quite the same as the pressure and urgency of a race. So anyway, we'll see how that issue goes. It may end up that I need to upgrade the motor and or ESC to something that is better. I mean, it's a good ESC. It's a 120 amp ESC or 160 amp ESC, and a 4100 kV motor. It's a short course truck motor. It's a hobby wing combo, censored. So it wasn't cheap. It was a good setup, and I didn't get something that wasn't all-wheel drive specific. I mean, this is a two-wheel drive short course truck package that they offer. So, but not their most expensive equipment. I was looking on their website, and they have a couple of ESCs that are well over 200 amp, and I think it was one of them was like 400 amp or something, and it's still in that same size range. So I may give Hobbywing a call and talk to someone in their tech support and see what they can suggest as well. So anyway, we'll see where things go this coming weekend. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.